And we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm going to start with a segment of the second interview from from a gentleman I interviewed for the first time at NADA. If you're not familiar with Luke, he won Used Car Dealer of the Year a couple years ago. That's where I interviewed him. Very interesting guy. This is just a section of the interview. Hopefully, I'll have approval, and the full interview will be up soon. This is just his opinion on used cars. If you are interested in tariffs and you want to be on the roller coaster tariff show coming up next Monday, let me know. Probably going to be some interesting discussions. I've had a bunch of people interested. Here we go. Takes a second.
All right, Ian, I just had it on mute. My apologies.
No worries. It always does this. I don't know.
Lots of turmoil right now about cost of cars, whether it be imported or new or used or parts or this kind of stuff.
Sure.
What's your opinion of the used car game for the last 5 years, and what do you think's coming forward on the used car side?
That's a great question. Post-COVID, we've seen a lot, right? Coming into COVID, through COVID, out of COVID, and kind of now in this post-COVID world, the PC era, as I call it, a lot has changed. And, we went through the whole semiconductor chip shortage, new car supply dropping through the floor, demand for late model used cars going through the roof. I mean, there was a point in time where anybody who got a dealer's license within a 3-year span thought that they were the second coming of the Messiah as far as a used car dealer was concerned, because they thought, well, this business is easy. I don't know what you guys are talking about. All I do is go to the auction, buy it, put it on my lot, and sells for $5,000 more than and what they didn't realize is that was a function of the economy at the time and the supply and demand, not their business acumen or their used car talent. So the ones like myself that have kind of weathered the storm and seen it through the thick and thin, from 20 years ago through the present day, I think what we've discovered is good old fashioned supply and demand is a very real thing. When things are in short supply, prices go through the roof. I'm an independent, we do an inexpensive used car. You're not going to find much on our lot that's over $30,000. We stick with vehicles anywhere from 8 to 2 years old, things that we can still get decent term and rate on, decent warranty on. But we deal with a lot of subprime buyers in our area. There's a little bit of a depressed income demographic, so we facilitate financing and purchase for those folks. It's very lucrative. When you master that model, it creates a very nice recurring trade cycle with loyal buyers. But we're definitely, so I guess to that point, we're not really feeling the burn so much at the auctions as much as the guys who deal in the real late model stuff. New car market, late model used cars, they fluctuate kind of simultaneously. They move together. But the older used stuff doesn't tend, we're anywhere from 2 to 3 to 10 years off of that cycle. So our supply is still pretty steady at this jump.
So that's a small segment from that interview. If you haven't watched Luke's interview from NIADA a couple years ago, buckle up. That's a crazy story, interesting cat. And on top of that, his story is a huge redemption story. So if you are interested in redemption stories, he not only went from being in jail to owning 3 car dealerships. It's a crazy story about what happens to you in life and how you adapt to it. All right. Good morning.
All right. Life is about connection. Having a support system to lean on. And roads to endless possibility. At every turn, guiding the way.
Is it my connection or is it
building the connections that move you?
Or what?
Is it my connection or is it broken?
You're not going to hear the audio. It's just streaming.
Okay.
One of the really nice things about Larry, one of the reasons that we brought him to our dealership, is he's so very much aligned with our core values and with our brand, which is thoughtful and professional service. And because that alignment really worked out well, because he was so committed to the success of others, we really knew that he was the right person to spend time with our sales team, with our managers and each sales consultant. And we're just really thrilled to have a partnership with him. And so we thank him.
How do you adventure? Is it fast? Is it free? Is it clear? Is it rugged?
Looks like it's coffee time.
Is it remote?
We actually
For your
drink.
next adventure, trust MotoClose for buying, selling, trading, and protecting all of your motorized assets. Powered by Disclose Dealership Management Dashboard, your all-in-one DMS, CRM, menu, lead gen, inventory, staff, client, and deal management solution. Disclose DMD, like a DMS, only better. Mention promo code AutoHub 2025 to get special pricing, including waive setup costs, no contract, and your first month's free.
Car dealers often underestimate the power of social media. Are you wondering why my face is plastered in your newsfeed? Are you a GM, dealer principal, or a manager at a car dealership wondering why you see me all the time on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and all over social media? Well, that didn't happen by chance. I target car dealers that are in-market shoppers for social media services, and I'm gonna do the exact same thing for you so that you target in-market shoppers for your brand of customers that purchase your vehicles. During my Viato days, helping car dealers appraise and price cars, everyone was asking me, what do I do on social media? What do I do with Facebook, Instagram, TikTok? And this was back in 2016. So here we are 10 years later. I started a company, became an entrepreneur, and now I help car dealers. They either outsource their social media needs to us, or we have a training and education center where we can teach all of your employees how to do social media in-house. 90% of consumers actually follow a business on Instagram. The average adult sits on TikTok for 2 hours a day in the rabbit hole. To learn more information about it or to get a demo from one of my sales associates, click the link below. We would absolutely love to help you.
And good morning. Yeah, audio. If I share audio on Zoom, it doesn't come through on the stream, so it's all good. It doesn't come through properly. Anyway, so it is an open format show today because it is month end, and I guess my question for everybody, obviously Brandy was on first, so she gets to introduce first.
You know how I love that.
No problem. I had the pleasure of interviewing a bunch of people on Friday. I'll have about 5 interviews up in the next week to 10 days. Luke was a replay interview in terms of I've interviewed him. This is the second interview. And there's been a lot of movement since then. But since he's in the used car side, I asked him a bunch of questions around used car pricing, specifically in the U.S. He deals with a lot of subprime. But as we look at the reality of tariffs, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to used cars. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Brandy, and give us your thoughts on used car pricing in Canada versus the U.S. after tariffs.
After tariffs.
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Brandy. I am creator at MotoClose and Disclose Technologies Corp. Excited for the panel today. Used car, I do believe it's going to change the used car market, how you source, where you source, etc. But I am curious, and maybe anybody on the panel knows this. What did the fluctuations of valuations actually look like during COVID? I would like to know, even from Black Book Analytics, what happened during those times, because I don't know if they're as responsive or if they're more of a proactive. They see the demand and adjust accordingly. But I would be curious how close we come to that same type of model at this point. Going in where we are going to have an issue with new car, sourcing out used. I believe that dealers are going to have to get more creative than they ever have. And so, yeah, I'd be curious to see what dealers are actually doing, what they did then to source out units, etc., and how it actually fluctuated throughout COVID. Valuations, were they reflective on places like the traditional platforms, Canadian Black Book, Carfax, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you bring up that because you look at VinQ and Van, they were obviously moving towards and still are, buying centers in-house with dealerships. But my recollection going back to pre-COVID was used car prices were generally somewhat steady. And then they went way up just because of lack of new cars. So the supply and demand ratio, as Luke was talking about, everyone thought they were a genius selling new and used cars for over what they paid for them. And it was like, yeah, people just want to buy it. But Doug, what do you think? I mean, you're obviously in the new car side, but what's your opinion on the used car side? I hear Amazon might be going into used cars, but what's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not educated. Peter probably has more data than I could ever have, but you know, my gut tells me that the long-term ramifications are, if used car sales start dwindling, that means there's, you know, fewer units in operation, which means ultimately used cars will become more scarce, which means prices will go up, which means, and I think the other thing that'll happen is, as these used car prices start going up a lot, people will start looking for used cars, which could drive the prices up. So I think it's going to be a very tenuous situation. I think dealers are going to be, once again, another challenge that they're going to face as far as the myriad of challenges that they're facing right now. I mean, Peter, do you recall the stats on used cars post-COVID, and where do you project it going? You're more analytical than most.
Well, it's a lot of people say feelings are not facts, and facts are driven by math, and math is what this is all about. We know that, funny enough, there is only one real manufacturer in the United States that's 100% American, and that's Tesla. Rivian to a smaller extent, but Rivian doesn't sell many cars. And then after that, it just dwindles down to it's just amazing on some of the content numbers. Now we have to remember, these tariffs are based on content, not actual manufacturing, where they're manufactured. It is actually content driven. Right. So like GM, I believe, is leading the pack at 80 or 77% content US. So they're not going to be as affected as Stellantis, which is down in, I believe, in the 50s. So when we look at the actual content of the vehicle and I believe it's cost of content, it's not the actual percentage of content. So you could have 70% of your car being little non-costing items that were produced in mass manufacture in Mexico or another country, and your main costs, your engine, your transmission, your suspension, all that body parts are all produced in the United States. So it's going to be a complicated audit of the vehicles. I can't see it actually coming out of the gate on April 2nd, as they say it is, because the audit, they were the manufacturers were given to the second to provide audits on their cars. How are they going to do it? It's going to be next to impossible. It's like getting everyone to file their taxes on time. It just doesn't happen. So where I look at it is they're surmising it's going to be a 3 to 10% increase in new car costs. What happens there is, we all know that once a new car cost comes in, it translates immediately to the used cars, immediately, and that is without a shadow of doubt. It does every single time. So it's going to drive the used car prices up. It's going to be a windfall for dealers short term on new cars, because they're going to start selling up until Wednesday, I guess it is, at old prices, and you already see the dealers reporting their biggest days ever. You see that people are out there when I'm hooked up with John Ellis and Frank Knox and a number of other acquisition specialists. They're out there acquiring cars right now. So there's an influx of cars being acquired. That means that they're setting themselves up for this delta that's going to be there for the used cars and new cars. So used cars are going to jump tremendously in value, because they're going to face it. We all know 100%. We know it. Dealers are greedy. 95% of the dealerships out there are greedy. They're going to take advantage of it. There's only a 5% swing that aren't. So we know it's going up. what it's going to go up to, how the public's going to get squashed by this is another story.
Yeah.
I'm fearful for it. Being Canadian, there's two sides of it. I agree with the tariffs and protectionism. I don't think it should have been implemented against one of their largest trading partners and most friendliest nations. I can see it against the Far East. I can see it somewhat against Europe, but I can see it against a lot more nations to do it than picking your best friend. Like, why would you do that? So that's my 2 cents, and I'll get off my soapbox right now and continue on.
Well, I had two conversations, one with a Canadian dealer and one with a U.S. dealer about this already. My phone was lit up all last week about this issue for obvious reasons. I'm hoping to have Mr. Volpe from the Canadian side on and also some U.S. side people on for next week's tariff update show, just because there's been a lot of interest. But I talked to Bill, who owns a Cadillac store in New Jersey, about what General Motors was saying. And I talked to Dave about what Chrysler Stellantis has been saying, just for some different points of view. The biggest challenge Bill says he has is he's got 40% of his inventory is electric, but only 66% of luxury customers want an electric luxury SUV or car. So he's got too much inventory in cars that nobody wants. So that's one of the problems. But he says the other problem is the manufacturer, in this case General Motors, is basically saying, we don't know. We're going to take a wait and see approach. That was kind of their philosophy of a meeting in Manhattan, I believe. So then I talked to Dave, and his point of view on it was used car prices are going to increase in the U.S. and Canada. They're going to decrease. And his thought on that, and I thought it was an interesting thought, was that if you're exporting cars in the U.S., which Canadian dealers do at scale, if you're not able to do that because of tariffs on used vehicles, that means there's going to be more supply with similar demand in Canada for used. So prices of used cars in Canada are going to decline. Now, new car prices, he said Stellantis also had nothing to say. They were like, well, we're going to see what happens and go from there. And we've also seen rumblings from the couple of the OEMs, including Honda and Toyota, who basically said, yeah, we're not going to switch manufacturing. We're just going to like stick with what we're doing and hope that works out, which I thought was interesting. But more importantly, when you look at the new car franchises, at least in the Canadian market, they're ordering the minimum amount of cars because they don't know what's going to happen. And he said the manufacturers are now saying, hey, you have to order at least this many, because it's no longer about we want you to buy this many. It's like you have to order at least this many. Because when you look at obviously inventory costs with an increased price, do you really want to be sitting with cars when really customers may shift to used, especially if used decline? So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Larry, what do you hear?
It will be, because Len, you brought up a very good point. When you really extrapolate it out, think about the dealers that are their floor plan costs on these new vehicles that they have to acquire. All of a sudden, the prices went up. Now their margins just continues to be downward pressure on margins. And what's that going to do to the overall operations of the dealership? It's almost like it's almost like a tariff COVID.
Yep.
It's like, oh no, here we go.
It's worse, Doug. And I agree with what Ian just said. One of the partners in my partnership is a significant exporter of vehicles into the United States. There's 400,000 vehicles that leave Canada every single year for the United States in the used car market. 400,000. That is a significant number on the Canadian market scale when you think we sell 1.6 million cars in Canada. That's 25% of our used cars are going to the United States every single year. When you talk about the tariffs, they're coming back. That's going to drive used car values down significantly, because there's only a small percentage of that 400,000 that can withstand the storm, and it's going to be tough.
I am curious, if it's 400 going that way, do we have any percentage? Is it select units coming back up in those same,
Nothing.
even fractional? Nothing.
Not really, because years ago, and it's funny, there was a big exporter I know in the Vancouver market. and he was exporting and importing boats and all kinds of stuff when the dollar was at parity. And the problem he had wasn't buying the stuff and importing it, was getting banks to fund it, because he was buying boats at like 30 cents on the dollar, because like all this stuff was being unloaded back in 2007, and he was trying to buy it up and import it, right? Because he could buy it for nothing. But I think what you're going to see, and it was interesting when you look at a group, for example, H. Gregoire, they have locations in Florida and also locations in Montreal. What they've been doing is basically just exporting a bunch of Quebec shrapnel into the U.S. market and selling it to people in Florida and elsewhere. Now they got a new problem, which is where they're going to get that inventory. So it's going to be really interesting to see that. And I think you're going to see Van and VinQ and others really expand into dealerships buying more inventory from customers, because they're going to have to. But also you're fighting against that 12-year ownership cycle, because a lot of customers are going to sit on their hands based on what happened in early pandemic when they're being overcharged for vehicles. So I think that hangover is going to bite them. But what do you think, Larry? We also have Leon. I don't know if she wants to comment, but go ahead, Larry.
I'm sorry. I was
That's okay.
Peter's got to be in a tight niche with May 22nd, so I was doing 10 things at the same time.
No problem.
I think it's interesting how these things keep cycling on themselves. For a long time, it was the manufacturer fed us cars. When I was a dealer, the answer to every problem was take more cars. Well, I'm not selling the ones I have. We'll take more. That'll help. Well, okay. Not quite sure how, but you seem pretty enthused. Sure. Yeah. Why don't you give me all the undesirable ones, the bad packages? I'm sure that'll be perfect. And then we went through COVID, where you had the unusual situation, which Doug alluded to, which was you had no cars, and the cars you did have, depending on your short-term, long-term thinking, you could charge as much as you wanted because you had 3 people drooling over the car. Right. And then you got back to, okay, we got cars, but guess what? Interest rates are up, so it's going to cost you more than ever. And I think everybody in this panel will agree, while every dealer talks about how important the short term is, they're not as good at it as they think they are, and some of these people are horrible at it. It's right, Doug. They've never understood the concept that you're much better off with $1,000 profit, in the first 10 days than you are with a $3,000 profit in 90 days, because all you did was show something on paper, which is false, because your carrying costs killed you. Right. So I think the answers are pretty obvious. You're seeing buy centers all over the place. You're seeing people be more aggressive on the service drive to find used cars, because it's an asset that we have more control over. And I think, I always quote, he just passed away, a great Philadelphia singer, Jerry Butler, only the strong survive. The people that understand Darwin's theory, that the more adaptable you are, the better, are going to be fine. Because if you look at every crisis, the dealers that had a clean concept of what they were trying to do, which is keep their customers happy, get more customers happy, have an intelligent profit structure, and most importantly, work fixed operations, since that's a truer profit and definitely a longer term one, I think they'll be just fine. But I've had a dozen people, Doug, you'll laugh at this, come to me like I'm an authority about tariffs. And I tell them, like everything else, it'll change and fade. I remember when the housing market melted down, people were losing their minds. 9/11 was the end of the world. Cash for clunkers, and the net result of that. So I honestly think we're going to be just fine. I think in 6 months, this thing will adjust itself a little bit, and there'll be some kind of fly through. But I think it's just as worrisome the fact that you can buy Hyundais now through Amazon, because I think you'll all admit that there's something really interesting about the fact that OEMs want us to build bigger and bigger buildings, and at the same time, the avenues to buy cars without even needing facility are opening up. So I think that's got to be as much of a dramatic concern as anything else. Well, I think that kind of sense. I didn't see Brandy throw anything at the screen, so I guess I'm being somewhat light.
I'm gonna jump on that, Larry, before Doug jumps on it. Well, 2 things. Let's talk about. Let's go to that digital retailing grenade that sits in the sand, waiting to blow up every single time that it's announced in the retail automotive environment.
Yep.
We were all at NADA. I picked up this book from CDK.
Great.
Great book. Okay? Gives you all the information. 78% of dealers think that they have a digital retailing tool. 68% think it's their website. And 31% of them actually have a tool. It's actually insane, the numbers of ignorance in our industry to digital retail. 6 months ago when it was announced, was it 6 months ago, Doug?
What's that?
The announcement with Amazon Auto?
A year ago. Wasn't it, Doug?
Well, we went live about 4 months ago,
Yeah.
but it was announced over a year ago.
Yeah. Okay. So 4 months ago it went live.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was going, the sky is falling. Hyundai, which is one of the most affordable car brands, is now selling on Amazon. The dealers are going screaming mad that the candy is being taken away from them, and they're just sitting there. I was on a Clubhouse call on Saturday, and one of the biggest mouthpieces on the call, dealer, said, I'm delivering my first Amazon car, and I can't believe how easy it is. I cannot believe on how easy it is.
Yep.
And we went from a detractor to an advocate overnight when he saw actually how it is.
Yep.
Dealers have to recognize, and it might have been leaked out by someone, I don't know, that Hyundai is not the only brand that's in the realm for Amazon Auto. But it is there. People are starting to recognize that there are other avenues for people to buy cars. 18% of people buy cars online end to end. 18%. As a dealer, Larry, if I came to you when you had your Cadillac store and I said, Larry, you can have 80% or you can have 120%. Which would you rather have? It's a simple question, and it's a simple answer. Any idiot in the world would say 120%. You're getting the opportunity to not lose that 80% that you're not doing with digital retailing, and gain the 20% that someone else is doing or is not doing with it.
Peter, the fallacy in your thinking is the fallacy that you always make, which is you're a logical, reasonable person, and you assume everybody you're talking about is reasonable and logical. Doug, I'm the least technical person on this podcast. I think I'm less technical than the chair I'm sitting on. But I still chuckle at the fact that when dealers tell me if I'm soliciting on behalf of somebody how great their website is, and I go to their website and every other link is broken. So if the basic tools don't work, how the hell can you expect them to get the other stuff working, Peter? Well, they're having trouble getting their BDC and their salespeople.
But also you got to go back. So if you go back, I think it was 4 years ago now, something like that. We started having shows on digital retail. So we had the big two at the time, which I think was Moto Insight and Roadster. And they were, before they got acquired, they were all at loggerheads with each other and with the dealer, and it's going to be digital and everyone's going to buy online and this, that, and a bag of chips. And the dealers didn't want to do it for whatever reason. And I think the numbers at the time were about 10% wanted to go through that entire process because it was okay, but it wasn't nearly where it is today. But fast forward now, call it 4 years later, those numbers probably haven't changed a lot. I haven't referenced, so I'll have to reference. But when you look at the metrics of just dealer websites, not even the latest websites, but dealer websites, in 2000, what percentage of car dealers had a website?
Probably about 5%.
I think the numbers were about 35%. The rest of them are like, yeah, the Yellow Pages works for me. So it takes a lot of time, but I mean, since we have Doug on the call, Doug, I mean, obviously I was at ADDA, there was a lot of dealers curious, obviously, rightly and wrongly. I mean, what's your opinion on, the adoption, but more importantly, you think it'll be faster than it was, say, for digital retail that still is pretty slow to adopt?
The adoption for what?
A to Z Sync and Amazon. Do you think that you're going to see a lot more dealers adopt it?
I think over time, I think it'll probably take a while. I think that there's a couple of things. I mean, I think Larry articulated a fear that a lot of dealers have, which is they think that Amazon's coming for their money and there's nothing further from the truth. Amazon's just a platform. They're going to end up in the store. It's the dealer's customer. It's the dealer's, profit. It's all about the dealer. Okay. Over time, I think it will become more of the norm because everybody's on the site anyway. And I mean, when you look at the reach and the frequency of visitation on Amazon compared to any other site in the world, I mean, certainly in the United States, it's staggeringly higher than anybody. So I think over time, yes, people will get accustomed to it. Will they want to do an entire purchase on Amazon? No, I still think that percentage is probably going to be low. But the exposure alone that affords the dealer, the fact that a customer is encouraged to engage with the dealer from the time they land on the car, I think will prove to be a nice communication avenue for a lot of dealers. And I think over time, 5-10 years from now, I think you could see a pretty substantial percentage of cars just bought on Amazon on the easiest platform to buy anything, and dealers are just delivering cars, which may be the savior for dealers as they continue to look at this downward pressure on margins. I mean, think about it from a logical standpoint. If I don't have to pay someone to sell the car, I don't have to pay someone to sell the F&I. All they have to do is really forward paperwork and deliver the car. My compensation model could be altered a little bit, and it could save me. So yeah, I think there's a lot of positives.
On that note, though, what is Amazon charge the dealer for? Like, I think that's really what matters to everybody is what's the charge to do so. Are they taking a percentage of the sale? Are they
no? Amazon doesn't take anything. No. Dealer right now for Hyundai dealers, there is no charge for all of 2025. Hyundai dealers are doing this for free. Now there will be a charge, and there will be a charge at some point, but it'll probably be commensurate to what you would be paying for any other platform where you're listing cars. The difference being, all those other platforms are really generating leads. Amazon, sure, you could ultimately get some leads for various reasons. But really, they're generating done deals. So it's a much more efficient platform. By the time the dealer knows what's going on, customer's already been approved. They're ready to just sign documents, come in and take delivery. So it's a significantly different platform than dealers are used to.
And the other side of it, Doug, is that this has been happening with other big box retailers. Costco has had a buying platform in the United States for quite some time. I remember when the Mercedes EQS, the big S-Class electric vehicle that came out to compete with the Tesla S series, and it was at the very beginning, it was harder than hell to get a hold of, and Costco was selling it at $20,000 back of MSRP, and at least with Amazon, they're not doing that. They're just facilitating a way to buy a car at a MSRP price, and that there is no friction, there is no nothing. This is the best way of purchasing a car for a lot of people, because people, and I've said this for 43 years. The people will come in and pay more for a frictionless experience that is satisfying.
Yep.
If you look at the average Hyundai, the delta from what it's being sold at the lowest price dealer to the highest price dealer in the country might be a delta of $1,500. Most people who buy Hyundais are taking them over 8-year finances. That means that the difference in payment is going to be somewhere around $9 to $10. It's not a significant amount of money, and people will pay that $9 to $10 a month to know that they're not getting ripped off. They're not getting any of the challenges. They're not going to sit in a dealership for 5 hours and get berated by someone. They're not going to do this. All they're going to do is go and pick up their car, and they'll pay that extra money. And it's a very reasonable thing to think about, is if we can make things frictionless, easy, and transparent, people will increase the 38% trust factor that we have in our industry right now. And that's what's killing us.
Yep. Yeah, what's going to be interesting, and to pull this back into the kind of the topic that started this, when the tariffs hit, Exactly. And what dealers are going to have to fight that and fight this trust factor. And now this just adds another layer in where the customer is going to say, oh, sweet. So now there's tariffs. So how are you screwing me even more? So dealers really going to have to, step up their game in a big way.
Yeah. And they're not qualified to do right now because we know that there's over a 70% turnover on variable. Therefore, you have a set a one in two are one in less than that. The numbers are astonishing that you're gonna potentially have someone who has been in the business for less than a year. You're 7 out of 10 times you're gonna walk into a dealership and you're gonna get someone brand new and fresh who has no idea of what is going on. They have no mathematical understanding of the tariffs. They have nothing. And that's someone who just came in. Forget about the people who have been there 2, 3, 4 years that still haven't been educated on how the tariffs are going to affect.
But
so you're going in there and you're just going to be lost as a consumer. And that fear is going to go up exponentially. It's going to be.
But that's it. But that's in all departments.
It could be.
That's in all.
It could be, but it could also be a great opportunity.
Yep.
I mean,
100%.
again, we keep looking for something that's going to instigate change. This is a great opportunity for dealers to really say, okay, I'm going to show them the value of doing business with me to justify a price that it's not my fault. It got thrust upon me. I'm going to have to sell it for this amount of money. This is a great opportunity for dealers to really focus on that. I mean, we keep looking for these things that come along to do this.
Well, again, yeah, that's true too. Also, even in the parts department, like your price of parts is going to go up too.
Yeah.
So the repair on that vehicle that you're going to keep is also going to go up. So you've got to really look at it and say, okay, Mr. Dealer or Mr. Customer, here's the reality. It isn't my fault, but here's the reality. Here's the repercussions of that reality. So there's an opportunity I think some dealers have taken upon themselves in the last 90 days and said, hey, we should push sales right now because we have a story. Like, listen, prices are going to go up. You should take advantage while you can. But what instantly I thought of when I thought about this on the service side of the house was prepaid maintenance. Why isn't every single dealer either doing their own prepaid maintenance program or selling something to customers they already have, saying, hey, we know retail price for parts is going to go up. Wouldn't you want to lock that in today? Like, why are you not having that conversation right now with every single service customer you got? Like, listen, we've got a way to insulate you from that. Did you want to do that, or you want to just hope it works?
But on that note there, I saw a video by Glenn Lundy, which I was absolutely pushed back on. He was doing one of his walkthroughs of his building, whatever, and he was talking about the tariffs coming. And he said, time is now to raise your fixed ops costs. Raise your door rate and raise your parts rate right now. Hit it now so that when the tariffs come, you are protected. Well, I can understand your fixed on your parts area, but I can't understand it on your door rate. What does your door rate have to do with tariffs? Well, and basically what he was implying was, while costs are going up across, you might as well lift them in your door rate, because that's going to compensate some of your losses.
Yep.
That you're going to.
Well, grocery stores are already doing this. Grocery stores are already doing it. On one side, they're saying, listen, this is an American-made product, this is a Canadian-made product, it's a Mexican-made product. But on the other side, guaranteed their wholesale prices have already gone up, because the wholesalers are going, hey, I know this is coming. I'm gonna condition that buyer right now. But to your point, what they should be doing is saying, hey, you should take advantage right now. Like, you should get your car serviced today while the price is still low. I mean, that's the way I look at it.
If I was the businessman, I would be doing the exact opposite. I would say, hey, you know what? There's been a lot of talk about this. This is what we're doing. We're keeping our door rate at this. We're going to do this. We are only going to change the pricing on the parts that has increases. That's it. We're not going across the board. We're not doing a 10% levy across the board or 15% to assimilate every price and things like that. and we'll take the hits on some and not on others. We're only going to do it on the parts that get it. On our price tags, on our new cars, we're only going to raise it by what the manufacturer tells us to. That's it. We're not going to go after it. And if you do that, your vision in your attribution from your local community will go through the roof.
Well, but Trump is already threatening manufacturers, saying, "Listen, you can't raise your prices." Like just because there's a
Yeah, but
tariff.
then last night he said he didn't care if they raised prices. So he's not going to both sides of his mouth. So it doesn't matter. I think, Peter, there's an argument to both sides. There's an argument to be said that, hey, if prices are going up anyway and the customer's expecting it, I might as well just make the hit now. Then I don't have to do it for several years. And I've insulated myself against the costs. The flip side is, yeah, the smart dealer's going to say, yeah, I know that I'm not greedy. I'm not going to be like every other dealer that's greedy. So there's arguments to be made to both sides. The fact is no matter what, this industry now is faced with another challenge. Here comes another challenge. So it's like, okay, it never stops. I mean, the thing that'll be interesting to me, Peter, and everybody here is, I wonder if this is going to spur more dealers to say, that's the final straw, I'm selling out.
Well,
I wonder if all of a sudden mergers and acquisitions all of a sudden going to ramp up because this is just the final straw. So I just can't take this anymore. I'm taking my money. I'm out of here.
I had 2 conversations about that last week with 2 companies that buy and sell dealers. So I'll give you the benefit of those conversations. One of them, you're going to see caveats now in contracts saying tariffs are going to be something involved in that purchase. But the other one I talked to actually on Friday said you're seeing a lot of U.S. dealers who maybe want to sell in 2007 saying, hey, I'm not going to miss this opportunity to sell right now. They're scared of this. And he said the other thing that was interesting was some Canadian dealer groups that own U.S. properties are selling those properties because they figure they can get money for them right now. So it was really interesting. But the caveat for tariffs was something I didn't anticipate because they were calling me saying, what do you think? And the idea on the caveat or the rider in the contract was if tariffs have this impact, I'm going to be able to walk away. And I thought that was really interesting. But I agree with you. I think you're going to see a little bit of both. You're going to see those smaller dealer groups sell out, some of them, because their tolerances, they just don't have as much tolerance there. And you're even seeing some big dealer groups saying, hey, I'm going to slow down my acquisition. But the heavy hitters are definitely buying. There's no question at all, in my opinion, because maybe they get a better price just because the dealer's panicked, right?
Well, the one issue we know that Auto Canada has Leader Group up for sale.
Yep.
And they have it up for sale because of that giant fine that they took.
Yep.
For improper business practices, let's put it that way.
Yep.
So it would take them basically probably 2 years operations, maybe 3 years operations to pay down that fine.
Yep.
At zero profitability. So it makes business sense just to take the equity in that deal and pay off the fine and get the hell out of Dodge. But I don't foresee. As a Canadian, I would be looking at used opportunities still because there is some significant opportunities down there. I know my contacts are all still looking for U.S. opportunities in the eastern side of Canada. They're looking at Florida. They're looking at Texas. They're looking at red states because that's where they believe the capitalism is going to be for the dealerships. I don't know if I agree with that, but hey, you know what? It is what it is. I think that this is just a small blip in this in the trip across the ocean. That's it. It's a storm outcropping that we'll go through. We've survived many before. 40, like I said, 43 years of the business. Larry's 40 years in the business. We've all seen horrific things happen in the car business. We've seen interest rates climb over 20% on a car.
Yeah, but you're also seeing international pressure, though. That's the other thing that's interesting when you look at Mexico as a market, when you look at Europe as a market. I was actually talking to Dave because he was in Mexico for a vacation. He was talking about just how impressed he was with BYD in Mexico, and how you're looking, they're kind of circling this whole environment to see what opportunity there is. So you gotta look at the opportunities. I agree with you. Brent, you haven't said anything in a while. What do you think? You're muted, I think. Yeah. What do you think? You haven't said anything. You've been like whisper quiet there.
I have so many thoughts, actually. So one thing I did do while we were talking is I just typed into chat during COVID, what happened to the used car market? Let's see what COVID's opinion was.
Yep.
And so early pandemic, 2020, demand plunged. Prices dropped briefly due to uncertainty and low demand. Rental car companies and fleet operations like Hertz sold off large number of vehicles, flooding the market. But by mid to late 2020, prices skyrocketed. Then 2021, insane price inflation. So now even chat is actually classifying it as insane price inflation. And then by 2022 to 2023, the market correction, 2024 and beyond is stabilization. And I just wanted to understand this also, just because, to hear that, yes, we're going to be faced, like right now, there might be this little bit of a lull that's going to happen as these branch out. But then very quickly, I do agree, you are going to see where, as Peter had put it, almost immediately, price adjustment and market adjustment to satisfy. So I was more so curious there. The other thing I also found interesting is, eBay, it did what Amazon is talking about doing. And so I'm so shocked that eBay didn't, obviously it was in an era of time that anything was possible. And so that obviously changed. But I really think, and this happened with government and rebates, the OEM involvement can really skew and hurt what could be a really great thing, right? So all of a sudden people are like, oh, Hyundai's involved. And well, Hyundai's only doing what everybody should get on the realm of doing. But I just wonder if the OEM involvement actually is affecting it negatively in this Amazon launch. Like eBay had used cars, new cars for sale 10 years ago on their website. That was kind of the thing. It was actually one of the markets that many dealers went to look for inventory as well. So I just find it interesting that, Amazon is doing something similar, or in a way, it's a platform. And so why is it viewed, when we're in a day and age that technology is way further ahead, why is it viewed as such a negative? And I think it also comes back to, like we said, OEMs have imposed huge new building facility improvements, etc. So does that kind of trickle into this play as well, and what that looks like? The other thing I love what Peter said is 18% are buying online, start to finish. 18% of people. So if we have 3% of dealers on there, they're cleaning up. You know what I mean? When you actually look at, that's nothing but opportunity. If you've got no competition and 18% of public and people and buyers buying from start to finish, why wouldn't everybody be jumping on that? You're getting a market that isn't wanting to buy anywhere else anyway.
In that 18%, you have to include Tesla, which is 100% of their vehicles are bought online.
That's fair. Yeah.
And so the real number, even still on that note, is about 11%.
Not according to Cox. According to Cox, it was 5%. Their study came out and said, 25 to 30% intended to, and only 5% really did an entire purchase online. 95% of customers ended up in the store. So it depends on your source, but the fact is that it's as it was years ago. We all thought that there was going to be a bunch of people doing it. They're not doing it yet. They're not quite comfortable yet. I think it'll change over time when it just becomes easier to do.
But generationally, it'll also change. We are dealing with different generations, different buyer market.
Agreed.
If you look at that 5 and 11 and you adjust for, the statistical analysis there, but you also adjust for the fact that probably Cox is skewing it a little bit, I would guess, that number is probably closer to 8%. That would probably be the real number, because you got to look at.
Yeah, the fact is regardless of the number, the fact is there's a massive opportunity.
Yeah, you're either doing it or you're not, right? If your competition
right,
isn't, then they're losing that
and-
8% or 5%.
And to Peter's point, dealers have just not addressed the digital world in a way that makes a customer happy. You know, it's just too many hiccups. There's too many hurdles. There's too much. It's just not where it could be.
Oh yeah, I mean, we did a show on Friday about digital MPIs. So I had UVI on and also Trade Pending on, and we were talking a little bit about digital. And I was going back to when I was working for DealerFX, and we were trying to convince technicians to take still images. And then you move fast forward and you look at a military technology that could take 10,000 photos in less than a minute. And you look at it and you say, okay, here's an opportunity for dealers to really use this not only to sell service work, but also to create a better experience and maybe even buy cars or spot problems before they're even a problem, much like your dentist sometimes does. And there's a lot of fight back against it because it's like, oh no, I want to go buy with the clipboard and do a walk around and hand bomb it in. But when you look at that compared to years ago, when that was the way to do things, very similar to pre-website, why would you want to not do that when it's such a game changer? I mean, not only is the customer experience better, you can throughput more people in the morning in service drive because it's much, much quicker. And you can share that information with the customer where it's kind of beyond reproach because, like, here's 10,000 photos of your car. Like, what angle did you want to look at, right? But also it protects them from liability for any kind of damage on the car. They can even spot damage that maybe even isn't visible for most people. They can say, hey, do you notice you had this damage underneath? Like, you probably didn't even know, right? So it was kind of interesting. But the thing that was really interesting about it is you're starting to even get technicians wanting to do videos because A, they're watched a lot, but B, it shortens that cycle from dropping off your car to servicing your car and getting approval because they can see what's going on. They can say, hey, I'm looking underneath your car. Do you want to fix this or you kind of want to leave it like this? And I would say the same thing is true with digital retail. If I can have a better experience or a similar experience and save myself time, maybe not money, but time, some percentage of people, and it's probably going to be increasing with generations, will want to do that because they don't have enough time. They're like, hey, I don't want to spend 8 hours at a car dealership. I kind of just want to buy the car that I want to buy. Do you have it? And how much is it? Kind of thing, right?
Yes, it will be interesting because on the flip side, you have this younger generation that's buying cars that they don't know how to do it. Right. So they're used to buying anything online, but now it's like, well, wait a minute, I can just do this. And so I think they're going to be educating. I think the ability of dealers to guide, and I think most customers have indicated in the past, at least the surveys I recall, that they prefer doing a lot online with guidance.
Yep.
So that's where, as Peter said, turnover could kill us. Because if we don't have a seasoned person that can help guide a customer through the purchase, then we're just setting ourselves up for just a bad experience. So, I mean, Peter has he and I have both harped on this for years. Just turnover is just, it's a killer. It kills you. It absolutely slays you.
I have a question, Doug. How do you suppose, this is one thing I find interesting about the Amazon platform is one of the main problems consumers have when they're shopping for a vehicle is their trade value. And so now do they have an expedited way to shop their trade valuation to multiple dealers that are on the platform? Are they getting quotes? Is the trade value or is the trade-in coming into consideration? Is the dealer that does an Amazon sale getting the trade? What does that look like?
Yeah. They answer a series of questions. They're given a trade value. They go into, they can accept the trade value or not. If they accept it, they go into the store. The dealer does the same evaluation. The number's good. The dealer can keep the car or he can keep the deal and sell the car. If the numbers, if the customer misrepresented it because shockingly, they didn't tell the truth, then the dealer offloads the deal and says, we got a problem with your trade value. Let's just talk about your trade. So yes. So it has
So next done.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Well, we're almost out of time, so we got time for final thoughts. So Peter, you want to start?
Well, I think come the second will be something that we know about this time. Unlike COVID, we didn't know what was coming. Now we do. So with that, I'm interested to see the different strategies of the people that I'm in contact with. I can't wait to see it. One last thing that I'd like to announce here, that I am doing in partnership with Larry Feldman and Sean Armour, both have been on the show. Connect, Convert, Close, which is a live event in Tampa on May 22nd at the Grand Hyatt, Tampa Bay. It's going to be an amazing live event workshop for general managers, sales managers, BDMs, basically leadership, to understand how to get these two departments to work together. So that's what we're looking for. It's a cost-effective event, so we can't wait to see people there. So that's what I'd like to close with.
Yep. Larry, you had some thoughts? You're muted. You're still muted, buddy.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm trying to do three things at once.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And by the way, Brandy or Doug or to join us, I have a special rate for you. It's a little less than what I charge my brother-in-law, but it would still be a good deal. I got to jump, guys. I'll see you soon.
All right.
See you, Larry.
See you, Larry.
Brandy, final thoughts?
Yeah, no, great panel. I love where the direction of the conversation went. I am curious to see what happens and really how closely aligned it is with some of the issues we did have in COVID, and more so how we're equipped to actually deal with that. I think right now dealers need to be more open to anything that maybe they haven't been open to before. It's worth a listen. Be ahead of the game, be ahead of the curve, and I look forward to next session as well.
Yep. And be different. I think one thing dealers can take away from the last time, because they're still got a hangover from that during COVID, probably over MSRP. You may want to rethink that, because there's an opportunity to stand out. And if you do it right, you're going to stand apart.
Where I was going. Yeah, that's where I was going. By the way, Peter, check out the chat. I sent you a message. But yeah, I think that dealers hopefully learned a lesson during COVID, and they don't look at this as a way to reap unrealistic gains now at the cost of pain in the future for the consumer and for them. And so I'm hoping dealers are a little bit more analytical in how they react to this. And frankly, I'm hoping cooler heads prevail.
And maybe they step up. Maybe they step up on trade value because of what they did in the past. Maybe they say, hey, we didn't know what we don't know, and now we have this new reality. You know, we're going to give you some TLC that maybe we should have done last time. We're sorry about that. And we're going to pay more for your car, because not only do you want a new car, congratulations, we want your car. And we're not just, it's not about blowing hot air here. We're going to pay you more money for it. Right?
I haven't really seen an official response from NADA on all of this. Has anybody?
They're still thinking how to respond to the poor attendance from the show this year.
Well, snow will do that. All right, guys.
The one last thing I want to add is I want to work in Brandy's office, because she's obviously right by a beach and serves martinis.
Yes, I noticed that myself. Right. It's like every day. It's a weekend. It's 5 o'clock there every day, every hour.
I need the reminder. The beach. Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
All right, then.
Pace
Thank
is
you.
slower.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye now.
See ya.